Hello. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. In a short while, we will be joined by guests Elliot Harris, the Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development and the UN's Chief Economist, and Leila Fourie, the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Co-Chair and CEO of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They will join us virtually to brief on the outcome of today's third annual meeting of CEOs of the Global Investors for Sustainable Development Alliance, as well as progress in the implementation of key deliverables aimed at scaling up sustainable investment globally. On Ethiopia, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the situation today in Mekelle, in Tigray, is calm but tense. Local health workers have reported that 3 children were killed and 1 person injured in an airstrike on the outskirts of Mekelle yesterday. A second airstrike in Mekelle town later in the day reportedly injured 9 people and damaged houses and a nearby hotel. Our humanitarian colleagues are alarmed at the intensification of the conflict and once again remind all parties to the conflict of their obligations under international humanitarian law to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. We also call for unrestricted and sustained humanitarian access to all people in need. Tor Vennesland, the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, briefed the Security Council today. He welcomed the ongoing engagement between senior Israeli and Palestinian officials and strongly encourages a further expansion of such efforts, which can improve conditions on the ground and pave the way towards reinvigorating the peace process. He added that we should have no illusions about the current state of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The situation in the occupied Palestinian territory continues to deteriorate, and we have seen no progress towards realizing a two-state solution, he warned. Mr. Vennesland said that the security situation in Gaza remains fragile, and the security dynamics in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, are deteriorating, including growing tensions in and around the holy sites. We can no longer lurch from crisis to crisis, he said. Our approach cannot be to address the current situation piecemeal, incident by incident, on a short-term, day-to-day basis as standalone issues. A broader package of parallel steps by the government of Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and the international community is needed, Mr. Vennesland said. UNICEF reported today that the Yemen conflict has just hit another shameful milestone. 10,000 children have been killed or maimed since fighting started in March 2015. That's the equivalent of 4 children every day for the last 6.5 years. These are, of course, the cases the UN was able to verify. Many more child deaths and injuries go unrecorded to all but those children's families. UNICEF added that 4 out of every 5 children need humanitarian assistance. That's more than 11 million children. In addition, 400,000 children suffer from severe acute malnutrition, more than 2 million children are out of school, and another 4 million are at risk of dropping out. The UN Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Joanna Vronetska, encourages the discussion in the parliament of a gender quota in the forthcoming elections. She noted that women's representation in politics is critical for an effective and well-functioning democracy and ensures that those in elected leadership are more representative of the people they serve. Ms. Vronetska said that the United Nations welcomes efforts to expand special measures for women, such as quotas, and to support Lebanese women's participation in political life. The Special Coordinator reiterated the importance of holding the elections on time. From Myanmar, the UN country team continues to remain deeply concerned over the humanitarian impact of the ongoing crises in the country. According to our humanitarian colleagues, some 3 million women, children, and men urgently need life-saving assistance and protection due to conflict, food insecurity, natural disasters, and COVID-19. This includes 1 million people who are in need at the start of the year, plus an additional 2 million people identified as needing help after the military takeover on February 1st. Some 219,000 people have been newly displaced since the 1st of February as a result of clashes between the Myanmar armed forces and different ethnic armed organizations and people's defense forces. The humanitarian situation in the country has been worsened by the recent wave of COVID-19, which is affecting people who are already in need of assistance. We once again call on parties concerned to ensure that aid can be scaled up to reach people affected by the continued armed conflict. Also in Myanmar, following floods in Rakhine and Cayenne states, UNICEF and its partners have reached more than 33,000 people with water and sanitation supplies. UNICEF continues to help nearly 150 100,000 internally displaced people and others in Kachin, northern Shan, Rakhine, and Sagaing. Today, the Secretary General spoke by pre-recorded video message to the Finance in Common Summit, which brings together hundreds of public development banks, governments, and others. The Secretary General called on public development banks to align their operations and policies with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and keep the 1.5-degree goal within reach. He stressed the need for a stronger, more integrated, and networked multilateral system, with public development banks as central players. Mr. Guterres highlighted the importance of deepening the cooperation between multilateral and national development banks, as well as encouraging the private sector to mobilize finance for climate action and sustainable development. His full message is online. The UN Refugee Agency today said it is alarmed by the humanitarian impact of the worst flooding in decades in South Sudan. These floods have affected more than 700,000 people across the country. UNHCR is working with the government and partners to help the most affected people by providing food, emergency shelter, hygiene items, and solar lanterns. In Upper Nile State alone, UNHCR teams met around 1,000 people who had walked for 7 days to reach Malakal town. Some of these people had not eaten in days. Women are deeply worried about the health of their children with the increased risk of infections from deadly waterborne diseases. UNHCR said that while the effects of the climate emergency are being felt on every continent and in every region, its impacts are profoundly felt in East Africa. Communities which are already struggling are facing unprecedented floods and storms, unpredicted rainfall, and distress under hotter and drier conditions as their basic needs and rights to water, food, livelihoods, land, and a healthy environment are hit hard. There's more on that on UNHCR's website. Also in South Sudan, the UN mission there continues to help authorities address the COVID-19 pandemic, including by holding workshops for students on how to keep themselves safe and healthy. The mission also says that fighting between armed groups continues in Warrap State. The mission and state authorities visited areas that have seen clashes to review the security situation and help to work towards a dialogue-based, peaceful resolution to escalating tensions. Moving to Afghanistan, the UN Children's Fund today said it has delivered nearly 40 tons of medical supplies, including kits and medicines for acute watery diarrhea, to Kabul. The medical supplies are part of UNICEF's emergency response and will help treat around 10,000 people suffering from dehydration caused by the disease. UNICEF noted that in the past weeks, the reported total number of cases of acute watery diarrhea has surpassed 1,500 in Kabul city and surrounding districts. This outbreak comes as Afghanistan grapples with alarming levels of malnutrition among children under the age of 5, a measles outbreak, and the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. UNICEF said that further supplies covering the needs of an additional 90,000 people are expected to be delivered in the coming weeks. I just want to flag that Miroslav Yencha, the Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia, and the Americas of the Departments of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and Peace Operations, is in Bosnia and Herzegovina from today to the 22nd of October. He will meet with government authorities, political leaders, representatives of civil society, and members of the international community to gain a better understanding of developments and views in the country. Mr. Yencha intends to reiterate the Secretary General's message in support of dialogue, trust building, and social cohesion in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in the region. A COVID-19 update for you today from Papua New Guinea, where our UN team there, led by Acting Resident Coordinator Dirk Wagner, continues to help authorities respond to the pandemic. Our team has provided health supplies and supported the vaccination campaign following a recent rise in the number of cases. The number of new cases this week has doubled compared to last week. Around 10% of the target population has received one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, while just 5.7% of the target population is fully vaccinated. The World Health Organization and UNICEF are working closely with the government to increase the number of people who are vaccinated. They're also working to combat misinformation surrounding vaccines. A new report coordinated by the World Meteorological Organization says that changing precipitation patterns, rising temperatures, and more extreme weather continued to mounting food insecurity, poverty, and displacement in Africa last year. The report, titled State of the Climate in Africa 2020, as to the rapid shrinking of the last remaining glaciers in eastern Africa, which are expected to melt entirely in the near future, signals the threat of imminent and irreversible change to the Earth's system. Africa's disproportionate vulnerability also shows how the potential benefits of investments in climate adaptation and early warning systems far outweigh the costs. The head of WMO, Professor Petteri Talas, says that along with COVID-19 recovery, enhancing climate resilience is an urgent and continued need. The report was produced in collaboration with the African Union Commission, the Economic Commission for Africa, and scientific organizations. It's available online. And the UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, today said that global foreign direct investment flows in the first half of 2021 reached an estimated $852 billion, showing stronger than expected rebound momentum. UNCTAD's Investment Trends Monitor noted that the increase in the first 2 quarters recovered more than 70% of the loss induced by the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. UNCTAD pointed out that developed economies saw the biggest rise, with foreign direct investment reaching an estimated $424 billion in the first half of 2021. This is more than 3 times the exceptionally low level in 2020, and there's more information online. And beyond today's guests, tomorrow our guest will be Caitlin Williscroft, a specialist who works for UN Women on the Women, Peace and Security Program in the Afghanistan Country Office. She will be joined by Nahid Farid, a former Afghan parliamentarian, as well as Mariam Safi, Executive Director of the Organization for Policy Research and Development Studies. They will be here to brief in the context of the anniversary of Security Council Resolution 1325 and tomorrow's open debate on women, peace, and security. And that's it for me. Yes, Edie.
Thank you, Farhan. Does the Secretary General have any comment on the latest missile launches by the DPRK, including one suspected of being a ballistic missile launched from a submarine?
Yes, we are concerned about the latest reported launches from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, including the report that a ballistic missile was launched from the sea. At this point, we'd like to just reiterate what the Secretary General has repeatedly been saying. We have repeatedly called on the DPRK leadership to comply fully with its international obligations under relevant Security Council resolutions. And we've also called for the DPRK leadership to swiftly resume diplomatic efforts towards sustainable peace and the complete and verifiable denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So we've been doing that. As you know, there have been a number of recent tests, and our position remains consistent on that. Yes, James.
You're still, when you're talking about what happened in Mekelle, using the words reportedly. You have people there. Why are you not able to confirm whether there were airstrikes or not?
We have people on the ground, but at the same time, we're trying to get as much information as we can to verify this. At this stage, we are relying on reports, including reports from people in Mekelle, but obviously, we are not. We don't have air monitoring and so forth as our facilities in Mekelle, and so we use the language that we use.
With regard to Ethiopia, we remember last week the Secretary General in the Security Council and the exchange with the permanent representative of Ethiopia, and the Secretary General making it clear that Ethiopia should come up with any evidence that it had against the UN staff, and the Ethiopian permanent representative said they would provide written evidence. What has happened?
We continue not to have any such evidence from the Ethiopian government. We're aware of what they said in the Security Council, and you're aware of what the Secretary General's reply was, and we stand by what he said then.
And just one more on a different matter, just to follow up on you talking about the Security Council and Mr. Wennesland briefing. Mr. Wennesland has now, to my knowledge, been in the job for more than 10 months. So that's 10 monthly briefings of the Security Council. I am not aware of him doing a press briefing with us or a stakeout with us at any time during this time. I understand it's COVID, but we are able to do stakeouts and press briefings remotely. Why is he not talking to the media?
We'll be in touch with his team and see what he can do. We've of course been extending the offer to all of the people who briefed the Security Council to do these briefings, and as you know, some of them have taken us up on this. It sometimes is just a question of logistics, but we'll try to make him available to you as soon as he can do so. Yes, please.
Thank you very much, Farhan. And so my question is about the last statement of President Erdogan. He said that the United Nations cannot solve the nowadays challenges and even can dominate the world for new crises. Do you have any comments on that? Thank you.
I don't really have any comment. You're aware of the work we do. You're aware of what the UN is capable of accomplishing, whether it's politically, in terms of humanitarian support, in terms of economic support. This is, we are used to the idea that different governments, different leaders from time to time can find criticism with how the UN functions. And certainly we ourselves have been conscious of the need to adapt to the world as it changes. But I think you can see simply from the work you do here in this building, the vast range of things that the UN is capable of accomplishing. Yes, please. In the back, yes, you.
Thank you. On DPRK, the Security Council had held meetings following the previous ballistic missiles launches, but it doesn't seem much effective. Has the SG thought about doing some personal diplomacy or speaking with the North Korean authorities? Thank you.
Well, we continue to encourage engagement, diplomatic engagement, including between the officials in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the Republic of Korea. The UN, as in all such cases, is willing to provide its good offices where all the parties agree to it. But at this stage, I don't have anything to announce from our side. Alan?
Thank you, Farhan. Last week I asked Stefan about the girl from Luhansk, Eastern Ukraine, called Faina Savenkova. She, as far as I know, she wrote a letter to the SG, and Russian permanent mission notified that they forwarded to SG. So she calls the SG to help block this controversial website, Mirror Towards, in which list she was included, because she says that a lot of minors are put in this list and are being endangered by that. Can you please confirm if you received the letter and what's the reaction by the SG? Thank you.
I will have to check whether the letter has in fact been formally received. Regarding that, as you're aware, we stand against the operationalization of children in these sorts of communications, and want all parties to avoid doing that. I don't see any questions in the chat. If there are none, we will be turning over to our guests. Are there any more from the floor? Okay, thanks. If not, then I would like, I think I see them already. I would like to introduce our guests.